Hello, this is episode 34 of the Movie Burner podcast, the weekly podcast from Movie Burner Entertainment, where we discuss the latest entertainment news, reviews and share our views. So what's up first, John?
First this week, Stephen, we're going to discuss the news that the Crow reboot, the ongoing will it not happen Crow reboot, is ground to a halt again. The director's walked away and the lead star has walked away. You've got an article to tell us all about it.
Yeah, stumbled across this last week. John on digitalspy.com, director of the Crow reboot, calls leaving the movie the hardest decision of all. He also shared a picture of Jason Momoa in makeup. Just 5 weeks away from the start of production, the long-awaited reboot of The Crow lost both director Corin Hardy and actor Jason Momoa. Momoa confirmed reports he'd parted ways with the film by stating that it needs to be set free, despite it being his dream role. Now Hardy has spoken out about leaving the project in a lengthy post. Writing on his Instagram account, Hardy wrote, "I knew from the off that the idea of making a new version of The Crow was never going to be for everyone because it is a beloved film, and I say that as someone in love with it myself. But I poured everything I had into the last 3.5 years of work to try and create something which honoured what The Crow stood for, from James O'Barr's affecting graphic novel to Alex Proyas' original movie, with great respect to Brandon Lee, with the desire to make something bold and new that myself, as an obsessive fan, could be proud of. And with Jason Momoa and my amazing team of artists and filmmakers, we came so close. But sometimes when you love something so much, you have to make hard decisions. And yesterday, deciding it was time to let go of this dark and emotional dream project was the hardest decision of all. Buildings burn, people die, but real love is forever." Accompanying his message was a picture of Hardy with Momoa in the recognisable black and white makeup. Unless concept art or costume-fitting photos make their way online, these may be the most we will ever see of Momoa as the Crow, after the actor confirmed earlier this week that he too had left the project. "I've waited 8 years to play this dream role. I love you, director Corin Hardy and Sony Pictures. Unfortunately, I may have to wait 8 more. Not our team, but I swear I will," Momoa wrote on Instagram. "This film needs to be set free, and to the fans, sorry I can't play anything but what this film deserves, and it needs love. I'm ready when it's right. Love you, Corin. Aloha, J."
Yes, I'm conflicted with this one, Stephen. It's a shame, because obviously they've been working on this for a decade. I believe it's been 10 years of on-off. It kind of makes the Gambit scenario a little bit more powerful, doesn't it? When you see the issues they've had trying to get this film into production. They just can't do it. I think they were mere weeks away, he says in that article, and then we have this. I think it's all down to the underlying conflict between them and the guy who holds the rights. I believe it's Samuel Hadida or something his name is. His company Davis Films holds the underlying rights to the franchise, so he's kind of playing hardball, and as a result they've had to pull away. There's creative differences and financial differences between him, the director and the actor, and Sony, the studio, obviously Sony Studios, so they've had to step away at the last minute, which is a shame because the original Crow was a phenomenal film. As I say, I am conflicted though, because I'm not a fan of rebooting classic films. I've spoken about this numerous times before. I remember we did the Willy Wonka topic in a previous podcast, and they were discussing it. I think it might have even been Sony Studios that was doing that as well. They'd bought the rights to Charlie and the Chocolate Factory franchise, and they were talking about doing a reboot. We both said we weren't keen on the reboot idea, because you can't remake a classic film. I don't think there's ever been a film rebooted or remade that was better than the original. So I'm conflicted. I don't want to see this film getting rebooted. I don't think it's possible to top the original. Absolutely outstanding film. But at the same time, I do feel sorry for the director Corin Hardy and also Jason Momoa as well. I've said numerous times, I'm an absolutely massive fan of Jason Momoa since I seen him in Game of Thrones. He's just a great chap on and off the screen. Really funny, charismatic, cool guy. Loves a pint of Guinness. He's a great actor as well. One of the best things in that abomination of a film, it was the Justice League. So I hope at some point they get this resolved with this Haldida guy, and we can get these two guys back and get this film made. I don't expect it will be better than the original, as I says, but hey ho, if they're passionate enough, then who am I to stop them? The director seems to be passionate. He's been on and off. I believe he stepped away before then. When they got Momoa on board, he came back in to direct it again. So if they're passionate about it, then hopefully then the two of them can come back and we can get the ball rolling again, and it's not like a Gambit situation where it's on off, on off, on off.
Listen, John, I totally get that. Fancy the original film, the 1994 film. Something of a sacred film to them, you know, especially fans of Brandon Lee and obviously the tragic events around that film. It's one of my favourite films of the 1990s, one of my favourite comic book films as well. I thought it was adapted well to film. I thought Brandon Lee was amazing in it. I've got mixed feelings on it as well. You know, I'm a big fan of Jason Momoa as well, and I think he would do well in the part. But you know, since the original release at the mid-90s, there's been about 4 sequels or something like that. Not direct sequels to the original, but sort of follow-ons. I think Edward Furlong played him at one point. I don't know how they managed that with his sort of frame. There was another one, City of Angels or something like that, I can't remember. There was also a television series, Stairway to Heaven or something like that. It ran for about a year and it was horrendous as well. They've never really came close to that original movie, and I can understand if people, you know, it's like going back and, you know, making a remake of Back to the Future. It's just, there's no need for it for a start, and it's not going to be as good as the original. The other thing about the 1994 film is it's timeless. It's not aged. You know, and the visual effects in that movie were groundbreaking for its day. Still hold up well, I think. Obviously there was a bit of reshooting to complete some scenes after Lee's death, but I feel sorry for the actor and the director. You know, coming this close, they're only 4 or 5 weeks away from, you know, beginning the pre-production, and it's just unfortunate. Would I have liked to have saw this version? Possibly, you know. It's not going to top the original, if I'm being honest.
Yeah, and one thing we're touching upon, you were talking about statures, where you says Edward Furlong played an interpretation or an iteration of the character. Jason Momoa, as I says, I do like the guy. I think he's a great chap, great actor. He's not exactly got the physique himself for it. He's a big muscly guy, so I don't know how they would have done that. And when I actually seen the photo of him standing behind the director, he put me more in mind of the clown for Ashes to Ashes that haunted the female protagonist. I forget her name. I've not seen it in years, but he put me more in mind of that big muscly clown with the face paint than he did the original Crow. You're right about the original Crow as well, Stephen. It was a fantastic film. I was watching clips of it just today because I knew we were going to discuss it, and it hasn't aged at all. I thought it looked amazing. I've seen a little bit of back and forth comments in some of the articles I've been reading where people say that it's not aged well. But I think it has. I think it's aged just fine. And it had a bit of everything, really. It had romance, drama, comedy, action, great revenge story, and as you says, it was a comic book film. Probably one of the earliest interpretations of a comic book film, I would have thought. Saying that, you'd probably get the Batman, stuff like that, and then you've got that horrendous Captain America film that was Superman kicking about in the early 90s, and we had Nicolas Cage trying to do Superman as well. So I'm talking crap, but it was a great comic book film. It was dark, and I loved it. And I completely agree about Brandon Lee as well. It was an absolute tragedy what happened to that chap. He totally owned that role. I can't imagine anybody else playing the role. It's just a shame he never went on to do greater things because of obviously the tragedy that happened to him. But yeah, as she says, I can't really add much more, Stephen. It's a shame for the 2 people involved. I don't know if there was other people maybe cast that we don't know about, but it's a shame for Jason Momoa and Corin Hardy. But I've got mixed. I'm not really fussed either way because I wasn't really keen on them rebooting it anyway. One final thing I'll say on this subject, Stephen, is I'll ask you a quick question, because this is what I like to do. I like to ask people questions and throw them under buses. But if, for whatever reason, this does pop back up again, it resurfaces, that they are going to do a reboot of the original film, and it comes back into play again, and for instance, we say Corin Hardy can't come in, or Jason Momoa can't come in, who would you like to see potentially directing or stepping into the shoes of Eric Draven? I've seen a lot of people mentioning Norman Reedus, obviously, of Walking Dead fame. He's a bit of a wooden actor. He's not a fantastic actor by any means. I like the little chap, but he's not outstanding. Another one that was getting bandied about was Timothée Chalamet, obviously up-and-coming actor. He's got the physique for it, and he's got that special quality about him, that intangible quality. Director-wise, I'd love to see James Mangold. If Corin Hardy can't come back in, I'd love to see James Mangold doing the Logan treatment on it. But I'll let you in if you've anybody you might think would fill the shoes.
If you're talking about statures, John, nobody really comes to the top of my head. Possibly Adam Driver, I think, maybe. Director, yep, I think James Mangold is a good shout. I think he would be able to handle that movie very well. He's already dabbled in comic books anyway, with the Wolverine and Logan, especially Logan. I think he took it to another level with his style in that movie. Would it work in The Crow? Who knows? I can't really think of any actors off the top of my head. See, I'm one of the ones that are stuck with the 1994 version in my head, and it is a bit sacred to me because it was a film. It came out when I was 18 and I was totally obsessed with the movie. As you know, I'm a big Bruce Lee fan, and you know, I like Brandon Lee's Showdown in Little Tokyo, films like that as well. So I can't really see anyone else replacing the original, but it'll be interesting to see if this project grows some legs in the next few years again. Whether or not Jason Momoa will be back in there with Corin Hardy, it remains to be seen.
Yes, and I'll not add much more on it, Stephen. We will move on to the next topic, which is the casting of Amy Seimetz to star alongside Jason Clarke in the new Pet Sematary reboot. But kind of discussing a lot of reboot films today, Stephen. What's your thoughts on that one?
Yeah, John, this came from Variety. Amy Seimetz is in talks to join Jason Clarke in Paramount's reboot of Stephen King classic Pet Sematary, sources tell Variety. John Lithgow is on board to play the role made famous by Fred Gwynne in the 1989 original. Starry Eyes co-directors Kevin Walsh and Dennis Widmeyer will helm the film. Lorenzo de Bonaventura and Mark Varadian are producing the remake of the 1989 horror classic, which was directed by Mary Lambert and written by King, along with Stephen Schneider. Jeff Buller penned the script. The pick is set to bow on April 19, 2019. The original Pet Sematary was based on the King novel, which follows the travails of a family who moves into a new home next to a cemetery endowed with powers that allow the creatures buried in it to come back from the dead. The original brought in $57 million on an $11 million budget, which led to a less commercially successful 1992 sequel starring Edward Furlong and Anthony Edwards. Following the success of It, studios have been ramping up development on all properties based on King's work, and Paramount saw this as a perfect opportunity to push this film on the fast track. The movie is currently set to bow on April 19, 2019.
Yeah, Stephen, I'm not going to lie, I don't know a lot about Amy Seimetz. I hadn't heard of her until this news title. I've got to be honest with you, I've never seen any of her films. Not coming across as a very big movie fan here, but I haven't seen any of her films. I think she was mostly starred in indie hits, and clearly I don't watch a lot of indie films. But yeah, I mean, by all accounts, she is a very talented actress, and she has been stepping behind the camera more recently and honing her skills as a director. But this film, I've never seen the original Pet Sematary film, so I can't really step into this conversation with any real authority on that. By all accounts, it didn't really closely follow the original Stephen King novel. This has been a big criticism of it. Apparently it split fans right down the middle. Some loved it, some didn't like it. I've never seen it. This one though, interestingly to me, I read an article where the filmmakers behind the new reboot discuss the approach they're going to take to it. Apparently they are going to take an old school approach to keeping audiences terrified, and they're going to more closely follow the Stephen King novel. It's going to be a close adaptation of the book, which is obviously good because Steve King is a fantastic writer. He knows how to write horror. I think he's probably one of the most adapted authors of all time. So I'm happy to see that they are sticking close to his story, if nothing else. Apparently they're going to follow a more psychoanalysis type thing than production gimmicks, which is great for me as well, because my big criticism of horror over the last few years has been that it do tend to rely on jump scares and gimmicks to get scares out of the audience. Something I don't really get scared with, and I just don't get scared with jump scares. And I'm pleased to see that they are pushing the boundaries with the horror genre over the last year or so. Most notably A Quiet Place. We've got a couple coming out in the next few weeks which are supposed to be fantastic as well. Hereditary and Upgrade, I believe, a Blumhouse horror, is meant to be very good as well. And now we've got this one coming out potentially too. Obviously It prior to that as well was quite scary in parts, more creepy than scary. So I'm happy to see that they are going to closely be following Stephen King's novel, and they are going to be going down an old school route to get scares. In terms of the cast, as I said, I don't know much about Amy Seimetz, but John Lithgow's in there. He's a fantastic actor, and Jason Clarke as well. This guy is just ridiculous. The amount of films he's popping up in these days is just unbelievable. Yeah, a fat Chandler that he is. He has been in an incredible amount of films. Just in the next year or so, he's going to be in Serenity, First Man, which is a Neil Armstrong biopic, which I believe Ryan Gosling's playing in, and you've got him in The Aftermath as well. And as I said before in a previous podcast, I don't know why we were talking about him, but he was my favourite character out with Andy Serkis in Dawn of the Planet of Apes. Also played Reinhard Heydrich in The Man with the Iron Heart. So he's an immensely talented actor. And his presence alongside John Lithgow and this young lady as well, who I don't know much about, bodes well for this film, along with what I'm hearing from the directors and the screenwriters and stuff.
Yeah, Jason Clarke, John. I think the movie that turned my mind set on him was Everest. I don't know if you saw that movie.
I haven't yet.
It was fantastic. I thought Jason Clarke was amazing in it. Just going back to this trend of these Stephen King adaptations being remade now. Pet Sematary, I saw that when it first came out all those years ago, a few decades ago now, and I'm not sure if it was TV movie quality at the time. I know that the likes of The Stand and It were broken into like television miniseries, and then they were compiled into sort of one large film. And I recall it was a very disturbing film. I always remember that. That was the purpose of the cemetery, was to bring back the dead pets, which is quite disturbing for its time. In 2017, as we mentioned, It came out. It was a massive success. 1922, which was on Netflix. I thoroughly enjoyed that. And also Gerard's Game, which I thought was a good adaptation as well. So I can understand why they're going back to more of Stephen King's material. I certainly would like to see an up-to-date version of The Stand. That was one of my favourite miniseries of, I think it was around about 1994 it came out, and I thought it was a fantastic story. Great cast as well. The actors that you mentioned in this remake, I think will do a good job. John Lithgow's a fantastic actor. I think he'll play that role well as well, and it's going to be interesting to see how this develops. I know that there's so many Stephen King's adaptations in post-production at the moment. I mean, I'm just looking at a list now on IMDb. There must be about 20 or 30 in pre-production. It's absolutely phenomenal, John. The man's work speaks for itself. I've read a few of his books as well. He's such a genius. And as you said, he doesn't rely on jump scare. I know there was a couple of moments in It that were jump scare. Those parts don't really bother me either. It's more the sort of weird and creepiness of the story that really gets me. And I think if they do this right, I think it will be a successful movie.
Yeah, well, funnily, you should actually mention The Stand, Stephen. That is actually one of the films that's been announced as getting the adaptation treatment, so it's going to be made into a film. So that's great news. If it's as good as you say, I've never actually seen it, Stephen. I believe Josh Boone's actually stepping in to direct it as well, so that's great news for that. The thing with Stephen King is that he has had a lot of adaptations, but I think the overwhelming majority of them, most people will admit, have been below par. I think he actually wrote The Shawshank Redemption as well, and that got adapted. That's also one of the greatest movies of all time. The Running Man. It, even the TV series, that terrified me. And that was obviously Tim Curry. That guy haunted my dreams as a young boy. He was just terrifying. But they were the rare ones. So I hope this is more It 2017 and more Shawshank Redemption than, say, The Dark Tower, which was just an abomination of a film. One other bit of good news is one of the co-writers, David Kaginich, I believe his name is, he has also written the new Suspiria reboot as well, which is getting ridiculous write-ups, and we're actually going to discuss this later on as well. So that is great news. This is a guy that wrote a film which is apparently just freaking people out, terrifying them and disgusting them. They released it in an early showing at a festival and they were just spooked out their nut, but we'll get into that later on. So that's great news for the film as well. I love the fact, as I said before, that they are wanting to heavily focus on what they describe as the absolute dread of the story and not borderline camp elements that were prevalent in the 1989 movie. I'm excited to see this film and more news about it, Stephen. Love Stephen King, and the chaps are getting on board. It's promising for me, so I can't wait to find out more news about this.
And I think just looking forward to seeing how Amy Seimetz performs in this movie, John. I'm like you, I'm not really familiar with her work. I do know that she has done a lot of either low budget or independent films that have certainly went under my radar. But it'll be interesting to see. She's clearly got talent. This is why Variety have homed in on this announcement, and it's going to be very interesting to see over the coming months how this will develop.
Yes, it certainly will. And we're going to move on to the next part of the show, Stephen, which is the Movie Burner blog rundown where we discuss the previous 7 movie reviews posted up on the Movie Burner blog. And what film have we got first this week, Stephen?
Yeah, first up, John, is a movie reviewed by one of our new writers, D.M. Anderson. And this film is Event Horizon from 1997. I remember when this film came out. I certainly enjoyed it back in the day. I've not seen it in so long. I think it was the first film I saw Lawrence Fishburne in. I know that Sam Neill was in that as well, just off the top of my head, and it was directed by Paul W.S. Anderson. But no, this was a great film. There is a part in Dave's review that I homed in on, and he actually hit the nail on the head when he says, in addition, the movie simply looks scary in terms of establishing a mood. It may be the best looking sci-fi horror movie since Alien. The Event Horizon itself is an ominously creepy ship and becomes a character in its own right, just like the Overlook Hotel in The Shining. He's nailed it. He's absolutely nailed it, John.
Yeah, the funniest part of this review, Stephen, for me, was a bit where he says that Paul W.S. Anderson is, for the most part, a shitty director who makes shitty movies, a lot of them based on video games. He's never had an original idea of his own, and most of the tricks in his bag he ripped off from better directors. That was just a great tearing down of that man's character, so I don't think I'll be watching any of his films, but I certainly will give this one a bash just based on the cast alone. Lawrence Fishburne, Sam Neill, Jason Isaacs and Sean Pertwee, just a phenomenal cast. The concept of it intrigues me as well, kind of I get mystery elements mixed in with sci-fi, so I've never seen it, but based on the review I may give it a bash.
Yeah, and just moving on to our next review, John. This is one that Darren reviewed, The Conjuring 2, which came out a couple of years ago, directed by James Wan and starring Vera Farmiga, Patrick Wilson, Madison Wolfe, and the plot is Ed and Lorraine Warren travel to North London to help a single mother raising 4 children alone in a house plagued by a supernatural spirit. And just before I let you in, John, Vera Farmiga and Patrick Wilson, terrific actors. Both of them were in The Commuter, although I don't think they actually shared any screen time in The Commuter, but they're certainly up there with Liam Neeson in that movie, were phenomenal. I've not seen The Conjuring 2, but I know you have, and you quite liked it.
Yeah, I like the 2 Conjuring films, Stephen. James Wan also directed it. Very good director. Vera Farmiga and Patrick Wilson are the 2 main, obviously, players in it. They were in the original one as well. They're kind of a paranormal investigators. And there's a prevailing theme of this nun ghost just haunting the 2 of them all the way through. And she's actually getting she's getting her own film, I believe, maybe later this year, I don't know. But yeah, I enjoyed this film. It was based on a true story of a haunting in Yorkshire, where a young girl was terrorised with a poltergeist, and it was basically an old man that had died in his chair of a brain hemorrhage, and they kind of get revealed through possessing this young girl. It was based on a true story, which was quite freaky. I loved it. I thought it was fun enjoying. I've loved the 2 Conjuring films. They were genuinely creepy films, and yeah, I thoroughly enjoyed it.
Yeah, I think, John, Darren nails it in his review, when he does say The Conjuring 2 does a very good balancing act of being a slick Hollywood horror film, but also being very grounded and scary. I find that with a lot in this genre, that, it's ironic that, when Hollywood do get involved in this genre, sometimes it is a bit too glossy and a bit too predictable, but I think what Darren's saying here, there is a good balance of horror seems to suit indie films more, as long as you stay away from that found footage technique. But he just finishes up his review with the acting was good across the board except for Frances O'Connor as the mother. She was a little over the top with her accent and her performance. They also wasted Franca Potente in a nothing role. Well, not nothing, but a really stock and cliche role.
Yeah, the final thing I'll say on it, Steve, was I liked the Elvis impersonation bit. About 3/4 of the way through from Patrick Wilson. He really did nail that impersonation. But we're going to move on to the next film, which is Red Sparrow, directed by Francis Lawrence, and it stars Jennifer Lawrence, Joel Edgerton and Matthias Schoenaerts. I've seen this film, Stephen. I really did enjoy it. I agree with what he says about the underdeveloped nature of some of the characters. I don't think they developed the characters at all, really. Joel Edgerton never really gets developed at all. He's kind of a periphery. He plays an undercover US CIA operative in Russia. Jennifer Lawrence is playing a sort of a Russian spy that's working for her uncle. He's part of the Kremlin, I believe. It was a decent enough film, quite violent in parts. I loved the bit where she beat the shit out of the 2 people at the theatre with, I believe, a golf club. There was some very violent moments. Joe Edgerton was in it, another guy I thoroughly enjoy. He actually got his skin peeled off at the end. But it was quite a violent film, but I did enjoy it. It wasn't the best I've ever seen, but it was decent.
Yeah, John, I've just actually purchased this on Blu-ray. I've not seen it yet, and it's certainly one I'm looking forward to. I know that you went to see it a while back and recommended it. Unfortunately, I didn't get around to seeing it in the cinema, and based on obviously what you've told me and on Dave's review as well, you know, it's certainly a film. You know, Jennifer Lawrence she's very comfortable in these roles. That assassin type role, she certainly has hints of that in the X-Men films as well, where she's very ruthless and cold. You know, when this first came out, it did remind me a lot of the character of Black Widow, but this seems a bit more grounded, a bit more gritty, and a bit more, you know, realistic, if you like, if that makes any sense. As I said, I'm going to be throwing this on the Blu-ray player this week, and you know, I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, and we will move on to the next review from Anna Maria McLaughlin, and it is So, A Star Wars Story. We of course discussed this in the Force Friday show, Stephen, but it stars Alden Ehrenreich, Woody Harrelson, Emilia Clarke, Donald Glover, Jonas Suotamo, and it's directed by Ron Howard. We discussed it in depth, Stephen. We spoke about it for about an hour. I enjoyed it. I thought it was a decent adventure film. It was light in tone. The story was a little bit weak, I would have said. There was never really any threat. It never had any stakes. But I thoroughly enjoyed it. I liked seeing the backstories of some of the characters. I've seen a lot of people criticise it, saying that it didn't do enough to expand the mythology or the backgrounds of these characters, but I totally disagree. I thought it was a fun adventure film. It was stricken with a lot of production problems, and Ron Howard came in and done just enough to save it. Doesn't deserve to be doing as badly at the box office as it does, but I'm giving it on.
No, listen, is it the greatest Star Wars film ever made? Of course it's not. It's not the worst one either. You know, I certainly came out of the cinema very satisfied. I went in with low expectations and came out pleasantly surprised in how much I enjoyed the film. I loved the comedy element to it. I thought the characters were great. And you know, Ron Howard did a fantastic job in saving this film. That's the bottom line. I think it was around about 80% people were saying that, you know, had to be reshot. Unfortunately, this film is always going to be remembered as the most expensive Star Wars flop. It's certainly not a flop if you take it out of a, you know, Star Wars genre. It's made a decent amount of money, but when you compare it to what it cost, then that's what people always remember it for, unfortunately.
Yes, which is a shame, because it's not that bad. People are not going to see it for whatever reason, but we'll speak about that later on, Stephen. We're going to move on to the next film, which is Cargo, from 2017, directed by Ben Howling and Yolanda Ramke, and it stars Martin Freeman, Anthony Hayes and Susie Porter, and I believe it's a strange sort of zombie survival film. I've not seen it, I can't really add anything to it, but Martin Freeman's in there, and that's usually enough for me.
Yeah, Darren reviewed this one, and I actually added this to my favourites on Netflix, John, because of the trailer. Martin Freeman's in it. I think Martin Freeman's a fantastic actor. You know, I've been a fan of his since the early days in The Office. And, you know, Darren's review, just looking at his final thoughts, it doesn't reinvent the wheel, but it does try something different, and even though it doesn't completely work, it's a solid genre movie, and it does have a good Martin Freeman performance, and gives it 6 out of 10. Yep, that's one of the reasons I clicked the favourite button on Netflix for me, because I will be watching this one at some point this week.
Yes, I've not got much more to add. I haven't seen it, but I probably will give it a bash because it is on Netflix. It's so easy to consume. But we'll move on to the next film. I believe it's the penultimate film. I've lost track a little bit, which is Dune from 1984, and this is directed by David Lynch. It stars a whole host of people. If I get into every single actor, I'd be here all day. But needless to say, it's a very impressive cast. I haven't seen it, Stephen. I believe you have. Can't add much to it. But it's kind of like Willow, where I hadn't seen a kind of a classic film from around about that time period. I went back and I watched it and I thoroughly enjoyed it. I would imagine this will be the same.
Yeah, that's a good description, John. Something that Dave that actually he mentioned in this review was David Lynch, who turned down Return of the Jedi to direct this. I remember that at the time. I remember just before Return of the Jedi came out, before Richard Marquand took the helm, David Lynch was connected to the third part of the Star Wars saga, Star Wars trilogy, and If you've not seen this, John, I do recommend it. It's a great film. It's been so long since I saw this. I saw this when I was about 9 or 10. But as you said, it's got such a terrific cast. When you've got the likes of McLaughlin in there, Patrick Stewart, as I said, Max von Sydow, Dean Stockwell's in there as well. People don't know who Dean Stockwell is. He is the hologram Al from Quantum Leap. Terrific actor. But the list goes on and on. It's a great film. If you've not seen it, I do recommend you go and see it.
Yes, and the final film we're going to discuss in this week's Movie Burner blog rundown is Batman Gotham Knight, which has obviously been written by you, Stephen, and it's directed by Yasuhiro Aoki and Futoshi Higashiri, and it stars Kevin Conroy, James Marsden and Scott Menville. I'll let you in to discuss it, Stephen, but I do know Kevin Conroy. He's Batman, isn't he?
He certainly is, John, and
Yes.
he is the Batman as far as I'm concerned in the animated world. Yep, I saw this film. As you know, John, I'm going through a bit of a DC Universe animated film binge at the moment, and I managed to get sitting down and watching Gotham Knight, which came out over a decade ago. I can't believe it. I did say in my opening line in the review that the first 5 minutes I was ready to put the film off. The reason for that was that I wasn't used to the anime style for this comic book character, and there was all these different version of events going on as well, and it was kind of off-putting. And it wasn't until I really understood what the directors were trying to do, and that was tell different interpretations of the legend of Batman. This movie is split into 6 parts. They'll last about maybe 15-20 minutes each, and each segment has a different style, which I thought was pretty neat. And I'm glad that I did hang on for that 6th minute, because it's one of the best films that I've seen. It kind of complements, it was released after Batman Begins and just before The Dark Knight, and it kind of complements those films, although it's not a direct sort of shoe-in. It's not like a standalone film trying to fill the blanks in. It's certainly got that style of the 1990s animated series, and it definitely does have the Christopher Nolan effect to it as well. That gritty realism of Gotham and its characters. It's certainly a great film. It's only on for about 75 minutes. That's pretty standard for a DC animated film anyway. It's got so many great actors. I was going to say voice actors, but I think that's a bit of the service these days. I don't think it's right to call them voice actors now, because you've got so many, fantastic artists in there. And as you said, Kevin Conroy is the sort of cherry on top of the cake.
Yes, I haven't got much more to add to what you just said, Stephen, because I haven't seen it. But by all accounts, that concept of splitting it up into various different films and kind of compartmentalising it into different styles, that was very cool. That does intrigue me. And that just rounds up this week's edition of the Movie Burner blog rundown, where we discuss the previous 7 reviews on the website. We're going to move on to the next topic, Stephen, which was what I hinted at earlier on. It's the discussion of a Suspiria 2018 Reboot trailer. It was a very, very ominous, eerie trailer, very much compounded by a certain Mr. Tom York's score. What did you make of it?
That totally disturbed me, John. I've got to be honest. It sounded like that sound that a swing in a playground makes when it's very rusty.
Yeah.
That was the kind of effect it had. The trailer itself, no dialogue, I noticed. All visuals, very, very creepy visuals, I might add. I noticed a few of the actors in there as well. Chloe Grace Moretz, Tilda Swinton in there, terrific actors. And although this is a remake, I've not seen the original movie. I believe it was out in the 1970s.
That's right, yeah.
This certainly has a 1970s feel about it. What a lot of people might say, I might argue it's not, but the 1970s was certainly at its peak in my opinion. Some people disagree with that, but certainly a lot of the films that I remember in that genre that came out was in that decade. This certainly does have that 70s feel about it, and it's just overall creepy.
Very much, yes, Stephen, and as you say, what a cast it's got as well. It's a predominantly female cast, because the setting of it is actually a dance school in, I believe, Freiburg. It's in Germany anyway. The original film was a demented film, Stephen. It definitely was. It was eerie, ominous film. He's certainly standing his one on its own very much with the colour palette. That's one thing I picked up right away in the trailer. Very dull colours. There's not a lot of vibrant colours in here, which is completely in stark contrast to the original film from the 70s, which was very much bright and in your face. The general plot of the film is, as I say, it's a young lady arrives at a dance school and she just discovers a whole host of odd events and stuff like that happening. She ends up, there's multiple people get killed in quite gruesome fashions. One gets stabbed and hung and collapses and falls. People are getting their throats slit left, right and centre. She eventually discovers that it's a witch and a coven of witches in this dance school, and it's an odd film. This is looking like one of the rare remakes that may better the original film. It's also the chap that directed Call Me By Your Name. Very good director. I'm completely contradicting what I said earlier on, where I says it's very rare that you find a film better than the original in terms of remakes. But Guadagnino is an extremely talented chap. He's done Call Me By Your Name, then he's went and took a 90-degree turn, dived right into the horror genre. And I tell you what, as I said earlier, it did show up at a film festival and a lot of the people were horrified and was completely disturbed. And even the director himself has come out and says that it fucked him up basically, and he had to go and get therapy after making this film. So if that doesn't tell you something, then I don't know what will. Stephen Weintraub of Collider fame says that it's one of the most fucked up things he's ever seen at CinemaCon. So that bodes very promising for me, I have to say. You go to see a horror film for that very thing. My memories of seeing horror films when I was a young boy were things like Freddy Krueger, and It, and things like that just terrorise you. They were psychological and they were extremely violent as well. So that's why I'm up for them, well up for that, and I'm excited to see it. That's just from the trailer alone, it excites me.
Yeah, as you said, John, it's a teaser trailer, and I don't know if it needs another trailer, to be honest with you, because I think if you show too much, it kind of dilutes the sort of anticipation for that type of movie. I think what they've done here is they've done enough, basically, and I'll be keeping my eyes out for that. I'm not sure when the film is being released.
It's due out the end of this year, I believe.
The end of this year, so certainly keep our eyes peeled for that one, John. Just moving on to just before we go into the UK box office chat, this was another piece of news that came in via movieweb.com, and this is in relation to Toy Story 4. Pixar trashed most of the Toy Story 4 script, causing major delays. Toy Story 4 has had a bumpy road to production, but the movie is finally coming our way next year. The biggest hurdle coming when Rashida Jones and Will McCormick departed the project, who had been writing the script for the upcoming sequel. That decision ultimately had to do with Pixar head John Lasseter, who has had several misconduct claims brought against him. In the wake of their departure, it's been revealed that the animation studio scrapped 3/4 of the script, which contributed to the delay. This comes to us from voice actress Annie Potts, who will be reprising her role as Bo Peep in the movie. She was notably absent from Toy Story 3, but the actress says of her role this time around, "I have a big part, I'm thrilled." Potts also discussed the delay in getting the sequel in theatres, which was originally supposed to arrive this year, but we're getting Incredibles 2 instead. Here's what she had to say about it. Toy Story 4 was supposed to come out this year, and then they threw out 3/4 of it and rewrote. Usually it takes from start to finish 2 years, but because they threw most of it in the bin and started over, my time on this project has been extended a little bit. I've done a lot of work on it. After several delays, the studio recently announced that Toy Story 4 will finally arrive on June 21st, 2019. That will put it out a full 9 years after the release of Toy Story 3, which mainly assumed to be the final instalment of the franchise. As for the delay, Annie Potts also talked a bit about the creative freedom Pixar has to simply scrap a ton of work if they feel it's up to the standard, which is not something very many studios can say. This is what she had to say, was that they're funny, those Pixar people, they just take their time, it's very painstaking work. If they don't like the whole sections, then they just chuck it out and start over again. They have that great creative liberty to do that. Annie Potts says that not being in Toy Story 3 hurt my feelings a little bit, but John Lasseter, Pixar Chief Creative Officer, explained to me the reason was because they were saving me for 4. So even back then they knew that they were going to make at least one more Toy Story movie, considering that the trilogy had brought in $1.97 billion at the box office and are considered to be among the greatest animated movies ever made. That's not too surprising. As for what the major script changes from writer Stephanie Folsom mean, it's difficult to say. But we previously heard that Toy Story 4 was going to be a love story between Bo Peep and Woody, with Buzz and his cowboy friend conducting a search for the missing toy. It's likely the core plot will stay intact, but the movie, which comes from director Josh Cooley, has been heavily reworked. This news comes to us courtesy of Radio Times.
Yes, as Annie Potts does say, that it's kind of a common theme for Pixar to do this. They do tend to throw away parts they don't like. They don't muck about. If they don't like it or it's not working, they just take the parts they don't like and they chuck them in the bin, literally. It's very important for Pixar to do things like this because they're famed and prized on their stories. Their stories are usually fantastic. They feature well-developed characters and underlying themes. It's always been a real strong point of Pixar films. You think of all the films that they have done, Toy Story, Coco, The Incredibles. They all feature brilliant stories with complex characters. They can connect with young audiences and also have underlying complex themes for adults who look for it. So it's important that they do get the story right, especially when it is a prized franchise like Toy Story 4. A lot of people still believe that there is no need for this film, that Toy Story 3 tied up the ends nicely. But listen, I don't care. I love Toy Story. I've loved every film that's been out. I mind watching this when I was a young boy. I'm nearly 30 and it's still there. So that's great to see. It's just continued to go through all the generations, and that's because of the story and the characters. And Bo Peep as well. This is meant to be predominantly about her in this film. Apparently Woody and the gang all go looking for her because apparently she gets sold in a garage sale or something like that. So they're all going to go and looking for her, and apparently there's going to be a potential romantic element to it with Woody and Bo Peep. I think they've had that on off bit in the other films, so yeah, it doesn't really bother me them chucking most of it out because, as I says, it's a real strength of Pixar. They have to get the story right. If they've not got the story right, then I say good on them for getting rid of it and owning up.
Yeah, it's unbelievable, John. 1995, the first movie came out, 23 years ago. It's certainly a timeless franchise and groundbreaking as well. From what I recall, back in the mid-90s when it was released, it was just visually a work of art. And it's not often that you can say that the sequels live up to the original, but they certainly do. Thoroughly enjoyed the third one. I did think that would have been it at that point. I can't believe it's been 9 years since that was released, because I do remember it coming out. Certainly does play on the heartstrings, that furnace scene, as I recall. It's just beautifully animated, and when you've got those voicing talents of the likes of Tim Allen and Tom Hanks, etc., you're just surprised that they didn't make any more, especially, from that article. What it did make is phenomenal, and films don't have to end on a trilogy, and certainly this has been long awaited. I could certainly wait another year. It's not going to bother me, especially with the release of Incredibles 2. That will keep me going as far as the Pixar movies go, and I'm certainly looking forward to it.
Yes, I completely agree, Stephen. As you says, that scene in the furnace had the impact it did because the audience have got a connection with these characters and they're well fleshed out and you care about them, and that's down to the story. So just heavily hinting again at what I says, they have to get the story right, so I have no issue with this. But we are going to move on to the final topic of this week's Movie Burner podcast, which is the box office chat, where we discuss the top 10 films in the UK box office for the previous weekend. At number 1, Stephen, no surprise, it's So, A Star Wars Story. It's grossed just over 6 million at the weekend, shown in 680 theatres. It's a disappointing figure for the film, you have to say. It's an absolutely massive sum of money, you can't take that away, but for a Star Wars film, it's just not good enough. We were expecting this to gross maybe 15 million or something, 15, 20 million. That's what you usually expect of a Star Wars film, and then it slowly dips off over the remaining weeks. That's certainly what happened with The Last Jedi. It's not done it. It's flopping all over the place, as we do know. Even over in the United States, it's not doing that hot. It's just lost its international number 1 spot to Deadpool 2, which has been out a week longer. I've not got much more to say on it. I think it's a bit harsh on the film. I thought it was a great film, an enjoyable film, and it certainly deserves to be doing better, but people are not going out to see it for whatever reason.
Yeah, I'm sure they've got their reasons, John, and I'm pretty sure that the last film that came out might have something to do with that as well, with a lot of the fan base. It's been a business disaster for Lucasfilm, this one. That's not to say the film isn't a good movie. Thoroughly enjoyed it, as I just previously mentioned, but sadly that just happens. Star Wars aren't immune to failure, and we'll see that, as films are released. It's going to be unfortunate if this is going to have a knock-on effect to standalone films. I certainly hope it doesn't, with Lucasfilm having the foresight to see that the position that this film was released in had a lot to do with it as well, in between Infinity War and Deadpool 2. Also, on the back of the most divisive film in the Star Wars franchise, only 5 months prior, has had a knock-on effect as well. Ron Howard did a fantastic job in this movie, as I previously mentioned as well, and unfortunately it's not going to hang on to that number one spot for much longer.
No, it was hung out to dry by Kathleen Kennedy and Lucasfilm. They released it in the wrong month. She made an absolute balls up of it by leaving the directors in for too long. We get into it before though. I'll move on to number 2, which is Deadpool 2. It's grossed 3.9 million for the weekend. It's shown in 615 theatres, and its total gross is now a much healthier 21.4 million. It's been out 2 weeks. That's what you expect in films of this stature. Not 6 million and struggling to get over a set amount after 2-3 weeks. Deadpool 2 is showing how it's done.
It certainly did in the promotion, John.
Yeah.
I've mentioned this before as well. I thought the promotion of this was handled better than Solo's was. I think their marketing for that was like 2 months before the film came out. Deadpool 2 has been marketed for the past 6 to 8 months, and it was handled brilliantly. I think Ryan Reynolds should be commended for his promotion of the movie as well, and Josh Brolin. And we are going to go and see this film at some point in the cinema, I know that, over the next week or so. I'm looking forward to it. Thoroughly enjoyed the original, and that's why it's earned 21.4 million in 2 weeks.
Yes, and at number 3 we have Avengers Infinity War. It's grossed 1.2 million for the weekend. It's now sitting at 68.4 million. It's been out 5 weeks. This film is just continuing to roll on all over the place. It's just shy of 2 billion now worldwide. Absolute runaway success. A fantastic film. The Russo brothers, Kevin Feige, the whole cast should be commended for what they did. I thought it was a fantastic film, and it thoroughly deserves its box office success.
Yeah, and that's the rewatchability of it as well, John.
Yeah.
It comes into it, that it's a film that people are going back to see time and time again. That's the success of the movie right there. The layered storytelling and the way they handled the characters was perfect. This was a 10-year build-up, so it's no surprise it's still in the top 3 here in the UK. Just moving on to number 4 in the box office here in the UK, it's Sherlock Gnomes, earning just over £700,000 over the weekend, grossing 5.1 million in 3 weeks. That's pretty decent for an animated film.
It is, Stephen, an animated film which by all accounts, judging on the critic reviews and just the general audience feedback, is not that great a film. So for it to gross just under 5.1 million in 3 weeks is outstanding. But I did see the trailer. I suppose some people could connect with it and get on board with the humour. It wasn't for me, but different strokes for different folks, horses for courses and all that jazz.
Yeah, we do have a movie review coming up next week on this from Anna Maria, and it'll be interesting to see her thoughts on that as well.
Yes, and at number 5 we have Show Dogs, which has grossed 549,000 for the weekend. It's showing in 513 theatres. And surprise, surprise, it's grossed 549,000 and it's total gross because it's a new release. This film, talk about bad user feedback and critical response, this film is meant to be absolutely abysmal. I don't know why studios continue to greenlight films about dogs that are not more serious drama films that kind of tie into underlying and complex themes. This is a comedy film about dogs, and we've known over the years we've had a whole host of films like this, they just don't work, and it's shown in the box office. It's only grossed 549,000 for the weekend. I don't think it'll add much more on it, Stephen, although hey, what do I know, some people may go out and watch it. They certainly went and watched Life of a Party and I Feel Pretty, so what the hell do I know.
This is getting a 2.8 rating on IMDb. It's one of the lowest ratings I've ever seen, John.
It's not good, is it?
No, it's not. I mean, Will Arnett, Alan Cummins is in there, so it's certainly not down to the actors, John, and it's not a film I'm going to get, normally I take my daughter along to see these type of films, but just on the reviews itself, it's not worth checking out at the cinema.
Yeah, even she wouldn't have went to see this one, Stephen. But moving on, it's I Feel Pretty at number 6. I was just talking about it. It's grossed £278,000 for the weekend, and it's grossed 4.4 million total. It's been out 4 weeks. I'd say that's about 4.4 million too much, Stephen. Absolute pile of crap, based on it being Amy Schumer, and I just don't like her.
Yeah, another £300,000 this weekend, John. It's got to be, our core base that are going out to see this.
These people.
Yeah, certainly. 4 weeks at the top 10. It's not to be laughed at though, is it? Certainly this film's not to be laughed at either, by all accounts. But listen, there's Amy Schumer fans out there just like there's Adam Sandler fans out there, so let's just move on, shall we?
Yes, and at number 7 we have Blade Runner: The Final Cut. It's a secret cinema thing again. It's grossed, surprise, surprise, £227,000 at the weekend. It always does. And its total gross is now 3.4 million. It's been out for 10 weeks. We spoke about this till we're blue in the face, Stephen. It's a secret cinema thing. Kind of immerse people in it. They're not allowed to bring phones in. It's kind of a thing where they get actors on who help enhance the experience. I certainly am going to be going to see it. I don't think you are. And we're going to move right on to number 8, which is On Chesil Beach. It's up a couple of places from last week. Obviously stars Saoirse Ronan, and it's grossed £170,000. Its total gross is now a lacklustre £280,000. But unlike A Star Wars Story, I would have thought this would have had a fairly meagre budget, and I suppose it's doing okay in that regard.
Yeah, Saoirse Ronan seems to be making, I wouldn't say a comeback, but she, certainly having a bit of success at the moment in her recent releases. This is a drama-based romance movie. I think it's set in the early 60s in England. It's certainly one that I think couples would enjoy, especially if you're a Saoirse Ronan fan. I think she's a terrific actor. This is based on the Ian McEwan screenplay and novel. And just moving on to number 9 this week, it has a bit of a reprise. It was just outside the top 10 last week, and it's back in there. It's Peter Rabbit. We've spoke about this for a few weeks now, John. This is starring James Corden, Domhnall Gleeson, etc. One of the things that really surprises me about this being back in the top 10, John, is that it's only 1 month away from its Blu-ray release. So why are people going back to see it?
I don't know, Stephen, but it's grossed 42.4 million total, and that is very impressive. Even for a film starring James Corden, who I can't stand. I think he's a fat little git. But yeah, it's doing very well. I don't know why people are going to see it in the cinema still. It's been out nearly as long as The Greatest Showman was. Another film that we spoke about endlessly. And we're going to move on though to the last film of this week's box office chat, and it's another film which I absolutely love to hate. Life of the Party, starring Melissa McCarthy, the greatest actress of all time, and it's grossed £112,000 for the weekend, and its total gross is now just 1.4 million. It's been out 3 weeks. It's not doing well, and I'm absolutely delighted that it's not doing well. People are ignoring this film. Good on yous.
Not ignoring it enough though, John, because it's still in the top 10.
I think that's purely down to lack of competition though.
Yeah, I think it is. These films do tend to be released round about this time. It's certainly not my cup of tea. I've seen a few Melissa McCarthy movies over the years, John. I've got to say that I'm not the biggest fan of her comedy. That's not to say that she's not got a fan base very much like Amy Schumer, and I understand why it's in there prior to the summer releases, the blockbuster films coming out this summer. So I don't think it's going to hang about the top 10 for much longer.
Yes, I completely agree, and I'm happy about that. But that rounds up this week's iteration of Box Office Chat, and indeed episode 34 of the Movie Burner podcast. We'd like to thank you for listening to us once again, and we'll be back next week. Remember guys, if you're enjoying the content we're putting out, then do subscribe to our YouTube channel, like, comment on and share the videos. You can also find us on iTunes and the Google Play Store at the Movie Burner Podcast, and give us a little follow on Facebook and Twitter at Movie Burners. If you fancy a spot of casual reading, then all our latest written reviews and the occasional article can be found at movieburnerintertainment.org. Until the next time, goodbye.